Look, I am going to be completely honest with you right now. When I first walked into the medical bay at Andromeda Apex Academy, the last thing I expected was to find a human standing there with a smile that could probably disarm a plasma cannon. But there she was. Nurse Kira Vance. All 5 feet and 6 inches of her, which by the way is absolutely tiny compared to my species. I am Thoran, a Velkrin from the Outer Rim territories, and I stand at a respectable 7 feet 2 inches. My exoskeleton alone weighs more than 3 of her combined. But here is the thing about humans that nobody tells you in the orientation packets. They are weird. Not weird in the usual sense like the Glorpians who communicate by changing colors or the Mythics who breathe sulfur. No. Humans are weird in ways that make you question everything you thought you knew about the universe. The first day I met Nurse Vance was because my doormate Plix had managed to get his feeding tendrils tangled in the gravitational shower unit. Do not ask me how. Plix is special. Anyway, I had to half carry, half drag his gelatinous form down 4 corridors to the medical bay, leaving a trail of what I can only describe as very embarrassed slime. The doors hissed open, and I was immediately hit with that sterile, clean smell that all medical facilities seem to share across the galaxy. You know the one. It smells like someone is trying way too hard to convince you that nothing bad has ever happened here. "Hello there," came a voice, smooth and warm like heated honey. If honey could talk, which on some planets it actually can, but that is beside the point. She stepped out from behind a medical scanner, and I got my first real look at her. Short by any reasonable standard, hair pulled back in what humans call a bun, dark brown and practical, eyes that were this unusual shade of hazel, which I learned later means they could not decide if they wanted to be green or brown, so they just went with both. She wore the standard medical uniform of the academy, pristine white with blue trim, and her identification badge read, Kira Vance, head nurse, human. "What seems to be the problem?" she asked, and I swear there was this little hint of amusement in her voice as she looked at Plix, who was now making distressed gurgling sounds. "Shower accident," I said, because really what else was there to say? She did not even blink, just walked over, took one look at Plix's situation and said, "Oh, that is nothing. Hold still, sweetheart." Sweetheart. She called him sweetheart.
Plix is a gelatinous blob who smells like fermented algae on a good day, but she said it with such casual kindness that even Plix stopped gurgling for a moment. What happened next took approximately 45 seconds. She grabbed some kind of tool, made 3 precise movements, and Plix was free. His tendrils flopped back into place, and he immediately started thanking her in his language, which sounds like someone is vigorously stirring a pot of particularly thick soup. "There you go. Good as new," she said, wiping her hands on a cloth. "Try to be more careful with the gravity settings, okay? 3rd incident this month." 3rd. She had been keeping track. Of course she had. That was when I noticed them for the first time. The scars. I mean, just a glimpse, really, as her sleeve rode up slightly when she reached for the cloth. Pale lines across her forearm. The kind that spoke of something sharp and something violent. But before I could process it, the sleeve was back down and she was smiling at us again like nothing was out of the ordinary. "Anything else I can help you boys with?" she asked. "No, ma'am," I said. "Because my parents raised me with manners. Thank you very much. Thank you. Anytime. That is what I am here for." We left. Plix was happy. I was confused, and somewhere in the back of my mind a little warning bell was starting to ring. But I ignored it, because honestly, how dangerous could a school nurse be? Spoiler alert, very, very dangerous. It was not until 3 weeks later that I started to really notice. See, at Andromeda Apex Academy, we get students from about 200 different species, all trying to learn how to coexist in this big, messy galaxy of ours, which means a lot of accidents, which means a lot of trips to see Nurse Vance. My friend Zilla, a Corvaxian, with way too many joints, and absolutely no sense of self-preservation, decided to try out for the combat sports team. She came back with what she proudly announced was a minor fracture in her 3rd arm, the one on the left, not the right, the left. Apparently there is a difference. So, naturally, we all went with her to medical. Me, Plix, who still had not learned his lesson about gravity showers, and Tormund, a Frostborn who insisted his name was ironic because he came from a desert planet. We did not believe him. Nurse Vance took one look at Zilla's arm and said, "Oh honey, that is definitely not minor." Then she did that thing where she gently touched the injury, and Zilla, who is one of the toughest people I know, actually whimpered.
Okay, Nurse Vance said. All business now. I need you to sit here. This is going to hurt. I am not going to lie to you, but it will hurt a lot more if we do not set it now. She moved to a cabinet, pulled out supplies, and that is when I saw it again. More scars. These ones on her neck, barely visible, unless you were looking for them. Thin, precise, the kind that came from something very sharp held very close to a very important artery. I looked at Tormund. He had seen them too. His ice blue eyes were wide. But then Nurse Vance was back, and she was setting Zilla's arm with practiced efficiency, murmuring soothing words the entire time. You are doing great. Almost done. There we go. See? Told you it would be quick. Zilla was crying, but she was also laughing because apparently pain makes her do that.
How did you know exactly how to fix a Corvaxian fracture? We have like totally different bone density than most species.
Nurse Vance paused, just for a second, and in that second something flickered across her face. Something old, something that had seen things. But then she smiled, and it was gone. Lots of practice, she said simply. Plus, I read a lot of medical journals. Boring stuff, mostly. Boring. Right. Sure. After that I started paying attention. Really paying attention. And once you start looking for the scars on Kira Vance, you cannot stop seeing them. There was the one that peeked out from her collar sometimes when she leaned forward. Sag, like something had torn rather than cut. There were the ones on her hands. Small burns, neat and circular, clustered around her knuckles, the kind that come from energy weapons when they overheat. I know because my cousin is in the military and he has similar marks. There was the way she moved, whole efficient. No wasted motion. She never turned her back to a door. Always positioned herself where she could see all entrances to a room. She walked silent, even in those standard-issue medical shoes that usually squeaked on the polished floors.
Am I going crazy?
I asked Tormund one evening in the common area. Or is our nurse extremely suspicious? Oh, thank the frozen hells, he breathed. I thought I was the only one noticing. She has more scars than my uncle, and he fought in the Rim Wars. Right? I leaned forward, lowering my voice even though we were alone. What kind of nurse gets scars like that? Maybe she worked in a combat zone, Plix suggested, his form wobbling thoughtfully. He had gotten better at the common tongue but still struggled with some words. War medicine. Very dangerous. For 30 years? Tormund countered. Because I looked up her file. Public information. All faculty records are accessible. She has been a registered nurse for 32 years. Started when she was 18 standard years old. 18, guys? That is practically a child by human standards. I felt something cold settle in my stomach. Where did she work before coming here? Tormund pulled up his datapad. That is the thing. It just says various medical facilities across Terran Alliance space. But there are gaps. Big ones. 5 years here. 3 years there. Gaps where there is no record of where she was or what she was doing. We all sat in silence for a moment, processing this. Maybe she just likes her privacy, Plix offered weakly. Or maybe, I said slowly, she was somewhere doing something that does not get put in public records. That night, I could not sleep. I kept thinking about those scars, about the way she never seemed surprised by any injury, no matter how unusual or severe, about how her hands never shook, even when she was doing something complicated, about how, just once, I had seen her catch a falling surgical tray before it hit the ground, moving so fast she was basically a blur.
Hey,
Then she had laughed it off, saying something about quick reflexes.
Hobbit.
But her eyes had been sharp, assessing, checking to see if anyone had really noticed. I had noticed. The next incident happened during what we call Integration Week. It is this mandatory program where students from different species have to work together on various challenges to promote unity and understanding and all that diplomatic nonsense. Our particular challenge involved navigating a simulated asteroid field using only verbal communication. No technology, just us, talking to each other, trying not to crash a very expensive training pod into very solid space rocks. Naturally, something went wrong. In our defense, the simulation was supposed to be safe. It was supposed to be impossible to actually get hurt, but apparently someone had not calibrated the feedback sensors correctly, and when we clipped an asteroid, the pod actually lurched, and Zilla, who still had not fully recovered from her arm injury, went flying. She hit the wall hard, all really hard. There was this sickening crack and she crumpled. I was on my communicator immediately. Medical emergency. Training Bay 7. Student down. Possible head trauma. The response came back in under 5 seconds. On my way. It was Nurse Vance's voice. Calm. Professional. Not a hint of panic. She arrived in 3 minutes. 3 minutes. The medical bay is on the other side of the facility. That is at least a 10-minute walk at normal speed. She must have run the entire way. But she was not even breathing hard when the doors opened and she strode in, medical kit in hand, eyes already scanning the situation. Everyone step back, she said, and there was something in her voice that made us all obey instantly. Not harsh, just absolute. The voice of someone who expected to be listened to because not listening could get people killed.
Oh!
She was at Zilla's side in seconds, fingers checking for a pulse, eyes examining the injury. Zilla, can you hear me? If you can hear me, squeeze my hand. Zilla's inner eyelids fluttered. She squeezed. Good girl. Stay with me. I need you to stay very still, okay? You have a head injury, and I need to make sure nothing else is damaged before we move you. Her hands moved over Zilla with practiced precision, checking pupils, checking spine alignment, checking limbs. The whole time she kept talking, kept Zilla focused on her voice. And then the second door burst open, and Professor Drakus stormed in. Drakus is a Thoran, same species as me, but older and meaner and convinced that he is the most important person in any room. He is also, unfortunately, the head of the training program. What is going on here? He bellowed. Why has my simulation been interrupted? Nurse Vance did not even look up. Student injury. I need immediate transport to medical. Please clear the area. Nonsense. Drakus snapped. These simulations are perfectly safe. She probably just got startled and is overreacting. That was when Nurse Vance looked up, and the expression on her face made Professor Drakus take a step back. She has a skull fracture, Nurse Vance said, and her voice was quiet. Too quiet. The kind of quiet that comes before an explosion. She has internal bleeding, and if we do not get her to a proper medical facility in the next 10 minutes, she is going to die. So, with all due respect, Professor, shut up and get out of my way. Dead silence. Professor Drakus opened his mouth, closed it, looked at Nurse Vance, really looked at her, and seemed to see something that made him reconsider every decision that had led him to this moment. I will call for emergency transport, he said, and left. Nurse Vance went back to Zilla like nothing had happened.
You are doing great, sweetheart.
Just a little longer. Help is coming. The transport arrived. They loaded Zilla onto a stretcher. Nurse Vance went with her, one hand holding Zilla's, the other carrying her medical kit. As they were leaving, I saw it. Her sleeve had ridden up again, but this time I saw more than just her forearm. I saw her entire arm, and it was covered in scars. Not just a few. Dozens. Thin ones. Thick ones. Burns. Cuts. What looked like impact marks from projectile weapons. Her arm looked like a roadmap of violence. And in that moment, standing in that training bay with my friends, I realized something terrifying. Nurse Kira Vance was not just a nurse who had seen combat. She had been in so much combat, survived so much violence, that her body was basically a testament to warfare. And we had absolutely no idea who she really was. Zilla survived, by the way, all full recovery. Nurse Vance made sure of it, stayed with her through the surgery, held her hand when she woke up scared and confused. But after that day, word spread. Quietly at first, then louder. Students started comparing notes. The Frostborn kid from level 6 swore he saw Nurse Vance disarm a malfunctioning security drone with her bare hands. The Methix twins claimed they walked past the medical bay late one night and heard her speaking in what sounded like military code on a private channel. Thoran found an old news article from 20 years ago about a human medic who saved an entire platoon behind enemy lines, but the name was redacted and the photo was too blurry to confirm anything. The questions multiplied. Who was Kira Vance? What had she done? Where had she been during those gaps in her record? And most importantly, why was someone with her kind of experience working as a school nurse? We were about to find out, but not in any way we could have expected. Because 3 days after Zilla's accident, everything went wrong. So, here is what nobody tells you about prestigious multi-species academies floating in neutral space. They are targets. Big, shiny, expensive targets full of the children of diplomats, military officials, and corporate executives from 200 different worlds. which makes them very attractive to certain types of people who enjoy things like ransom demands and political leverage. Like, here is what nobody tells you about prestigious multi-species academies floating in neutral space. They are targets. Big, shiny, expensive targets full of the children of diplomats, military officials, and corporate executives from 200 different worlds. We found this out the hard way. It was third meal period, which means the cafeteria was absolutely packed. I was sitting with my usual group, Tormund, Plix, and Zilla, who was back on her feet and already complaining about the restrictive medical monitoring bracelet Nurse Vance had made her wear. Typical Zilla. Nearly dies, annoyed about the safety precautions. I am just saying, Zilla was arguing, waving her forearms for emphasis that I am perfectly fine now. This thing itches. All 4 of my dermis layers itch. Maybe that is the point, Tormund suggested, carefully eating what passed for food on his planet but looked like frozen rocks to the rest of us. Maybe she wants you to remember that actions have consequences. You sound like my grandmother, Zilla grumbled. That was when the lights went out. Not flickered, not dimmed, went completely out, plunging the entire cafeteria into absolute darkness. And when I say absolute, I mean the kind of darkness where you cannot see your own hand in front of your face even if you have excellent Velkrin night vision like I do. Someone screamed. Multiple someones, actually. Chairs scraped. Something crashed. Then the emergency lighting kicked in, bathing everything in that awful red glow that makes everyone look either dead or demonic. Take your pick. And standing in the doorway were 6 figures in tactical armor, holding very large, very illegal plasma rifles. Oh no, oh no. Nobody move, one of them said, voice distorted through a helmet modulator. This facility is now under our control. You will all remain calm and follow instructions, and nobody needs to get hurt. You know that thing where your brain kind of disconnects from your body during a crisis, where everything feels surreal and distant? Yeah, that happened. I sat there, frozen, watching armed intruders take over my school cafeteria like this was some kind of bad action movie. Except it was not a movie. It was very, very real. All students remain seated. Another figure barked. Faculty and staff, hands where we can see them. Professor Drakus, who had been sitting at the staff table, slowly stood up. Now see here. I demand to know what you think you are doing. This is a protected educational facility under Galactic treaty law. One of the intruders pointed their rifle at him. Sit down. Drakus sat down. Very quickly. My communicator buzzed. So did everyone else's. A message, broadcast to every device in the facility. Attention students and staff of Andromeda Apex Academy. Your facility has been seized by the Liberation Front. We have disabled your communications arrays and shielding systems. Any attempt to contact outside authorities will result in immediate casualties. Cooperate, and this will be over soon. The Liberation Front.
Oh, that was just perfect.
They were this radical group that believed in, well, honestly, I am not entirely sure what they believed in. Something about species purity and territorial rights and a whole bunch of political nonsense that basically boiled down to them being terrorists. What do we do? Plax whispered, his form quivering with fear. We stay calm, I whispered back. We do what they say, help will come. But even as I said it, I was not sure I believed it. The academy was in neutral space. Help could take hours, days even, and these people had plasma rifles. The intruders started moving through the cafeteria, systematically checking students, confiscating communicators, binding hands with electronic restraints. They were efficient, professional. This was not their first raid. That was when I noticed one of them had stopped at the staff table, was talking to someone. I craned my neck to see who. It was Nurse Vance. She had been sitting with the other medical staff, probably on her meal break. Now she was standing, hands raised, face completely calm, too calm. The kind of calm that makes you wonder if the person is actually calm or just very good at pretending. Medical personnel, the intruder was saying, you will come with us. We may need your services. Of course, Nurse Vance said smoothly, whatever you need. She walked with them toward the exit, flanked by 2 armed guards. But just before she disappeared through the doorway, she looked back. Her eyes swept the cafeteria, taking in every detail, every position, every threat, and for just a second, her gaze met mine. She winked. She actually winked. Then she was gone, and I was left sitting there thinking, what in the frozen hells was that about? Did she just? Tormund started. Yep, I confirmed. Why would she? Zilla began. No idea, I said. But somewhere in my gut something was telling me that maybe, just maybe, we were not as doomed as we thought. The next hour was tense. The intruders kept us locked in the cafeteria under guard. Nobody was allowed to leave, not even for bathroom breaks, which was becoming a serious problem for several species whose biology did not handle stress well. Someone was crying. Multiple someones. Actually, can you blame them? We were kids. Most of us had never experienced actual violence before. I kept thinking about Nurse Vance, about those scars, about the way she moved, about how she had handled Professor Drakus without breaking a sweat. About that wink. She has a plan, I said suddenly. Thoran looked at me like I had just suggested we all sprout wings and fly away. What? Nurse Vance. She has a plan. Did you see her face? She was not scared, at all. Maybe she is just good under pressure, Zilla suggested. Or maybe, I said slowly, she is exactly the kind of person who knows how to handle situations like this. Plix wobbled, thoughtfully. You think she is military? I think she is something, I said. And I think we are about to find out what. Turned out, I was right. It started with the lights going out again. Full darkness. Just like before. But this time, there was something else. A sound. Soft, almost imperceptible. Like fabric moving through air. Then someone screamed. One of the guards. Cut off abruptly. The emergency lights came back on. One guard was on the ground, unconscious. His rifle was gone. The other guards spun, weapons raised, searching for threats. What happened? One of them shouted into their comm unit. Report. All units report. Static. Nothing but static. That was when the cafeteria doors opened, and Nurse Kira Vance walked in.
Hoi.
But this was not the Nurse Vance we knew. This was someone else entirely. She moved like liquid mercury, smooth and unstoppable. In her hands, she carried 2 confiscated plasma rifles, one in each hand, held with the casual confidence of someone who had done this 1,000 times before. Good evening, gentlemen, she said pleasantly. I believe you are trespassing. One of the guards raised his rifle. She shot it out of his hands before he could even aim. The precision was absurd.
Impossible.
The kind of marksmanship that takes decades to develop. I would not, she said, still in that pleasant tone. Really, I am having a good day and I would hate to ruin it by cleaning blood off these nice floors. Who are you? One of them demanded. She smiled. And it was not a nice smile. It was the smile of someone who knew exactly how many ways they could kill you, and was mentally ranking them by efficiency. May? I am just the school nurse. She paused. Well, mostly, I used to have another job. You might have heard of it. Alliance Special Operations. Ghost Unit. Active for 28 years before I retired. Boeing. Cole. Coast Unit. I knew that name. Everyone knew that name. They were legends.
Horror stories.
The boogeyman that enemy combatants whispered about in the dark. The unit that did not officially exist but had ended 3 separate wars through surgical strikes and covert operations. They were the best of the best, recruited from across the Terran Alliance military, trained in every form of combat, augmented with classified technology. And Nurse Vance had been one of them. For 28 years. Suddenly, every scar made sense. Every careful movement, every moment of absolute competence. She was not just a nurse who had seen combat. She was a soldier who had learned nursing so she could keep fighting even when the medics were gone. That is impossible, one of the guards said. To Ghost Unit members do not retire.
Oh.
They die in service. Most do, Nurse Vance agreed. I got lucky. Saved the right general's daughter. Got offered a medical discharge and a new identity. Took the discharge. Kept some of the skills. She tilted her head. You gentlemen have about 30 seconds to put down your weapons and surrender before I stop being polite. There are 5 of us, one of them snarled. You cannot take all of us. Her smile widened. Sweetheart, I have fought worse odds before breakfast. Try me. What happened next? Took exactly 12 seconds. I know because Thoran was timing it on his recovered communicator. She moved. That is the only way to describe it. She just moved and suddenly guards were on the ground. Weapons were flying through the air and there were sounds that I am pretty sure were bones breaking. She did not kill anyone, I noticed. Every strike was precise, calculated to disable without permanent damage. Professional. Controlled. Terrifying. When it was over, all 5 guards were unconscious or groaning on the floor, and Nurse Vance was standing in the middle of them, not even breathing hard. She looked at all of us, at 200 shocked students who had just watched their school nurse take down 5 armed terrorists like it was nothing. "Everyone okay?" she asked, like she had just finished treating a scraped knee. Nobody answered. We were all too busy trying to process what we had just witnessed. She sighed. "Right.
Shock.
That is normal.
Listen up, kids.
Here is what is going to happen. I have already neutralized the other teams throughout the facility.
Yes. All of them.
No, do not ask how.
Station security is on their way, but they are still 10 minutes out, so we are going to sit tight and stay calm. Medical personnel, if anyone needs treatment for panic attacks or stress responses, now is the time to speak up." Slowly, people started moving, started talking, started crying in relief. I just sat there, staring at her. She noticed, walked over, crouched down so we were at eye level. "You okay, Thoran?" she asked gently.
You are ghost unit.
I said stupidly. "You are ghost unit," I said stupidly. "Was," she corrected. "Retired. Mostly. The scars. 28 years of active service," she confirmed. "You accumulate some damage." "Why here?" I asked. "Why be a school nurse if you were one of the most elite soldiers in the galaxy?" She was quiet for a moment. Then she smiled, and this time it was genuine. "Because I spent 3 decades hurting people," she said softly. "Very bad people. People who needed to be stopped, but still, I hurt people. I killed people. And I got tired, Thoran. So tired. So when they offered me the discharge, I took it. And I decided that maybe, just maybe, I could spend the rest of my life helping people instead. Kids, especially. Kids who have not learned to hurt each other yet. Kids who might grow up to be better than we were." She straightened up. "Plus, the benefits are great, and I really like the cafeteria food. The Glorpian stew. Amazing. Do not tell me what is in it. But, amazing." Despite everything, I laughed. Actual laughter, in a cafeteria full of unconscious terrorists. Station security arrived 9 minutes later. They took the Liberation Front members into custody, secured the facility, and started taking statements. The whole thing was over by evening meal, but the story was not. Within days, news of what happened had spread across the entire academy, then across the station, then across the entire sector. The school nurse who was secretly ghost unit, then woman with more confirmed combat saves than most active duty platoons, then with more confirmed combat saves than most active duty platoons. Kira Vance, who had spent nearly 3 decades being a living weapon and then decided to become a healer instead. Students started looking at her differently, with awe, with respect, some with fear, which she clearly did not like. "I am still just a nurse," she kept insisting. "The other stuff is in the past." But we knew better now. We knew that when she gently set a broken bone or calmly talked someone through a panic attack, those same hands had disarmed bombs and neutralized threats. We knew that when she smiled and called us sweetheart, she was someone who had faced down warlords and walked away. We knew that Nurse Kira Vance was both the gentlest and the most dangerous person in the entire facility. A week after the incident, I had to go back to medical for a follow-up. Just a routine checkup because I had pulled a muscle during the whole terrorist situation. Nothing serious. She greeted me with the same warm smile. "Hey Thoran, how are you feeling?" "Better," I said. Then, because I had to know, "Do you miss it, the old job?" She considered the question while checking my vital signs. Sometimes, she admitted. The adrenaline. The purpose. Knowing exactly who the enemy was and how to stop them. It was simple. In a way, clear. But this is better," she said firmly. "Every kid I patch up, every injury I prevent, every scared student I help calm down, that is worth more than any mission I ever ran. Because you all have futures. Long, complicated, messy futures, full of possibilities. And I get to help make sure you reach them."
She grinned.
"Plus, like I said, the cafeteria food is really good." I laughed again. I seemed to be doing that a lot around her lately. As I was leaving, I turned back. "Nurse Vance?" "Yes? Thank you. For protecting us. And for trusting us enough to stay." Her expression softened. "Anytime, sweetheart, that is what I am here for." And you know what? I believed her. Look, I started this story by telling you that humans are weird, and they are. They are absolutely, completely, bizarrely weird. They are soft and fragile compared to most species. They do not have natural armor or venomous fangs or acid blood. They break easily. But here is what I learned from Nurse Kira Vance. Humans do not need armor because they are too stubborn to stay down. They do not need fangs because their minds are sharp enough to cut through any problem. They do not need acid blood because their spirits are corrosive enough to eat through any obstacle. They take damage and keep going. They collect scars like other species collect awards. They survive things that would kill anyone else, and then they have the audacity to call it a learning experience. And sometimes, just sometimes, they decide that after spending decades being warriors, they would rather be healers instead. Nurse Kira Vance taught me that strength is not just about how much damage you can do. It is about how much damage you can endure and still choose kindness. It is about having the power to hurt people and deciding to help them instead. She has more combat scars than my people's most decorated generals. She has confirmed kills that are still classified. She has commendations from species I cannot even pronounce. And she uses all that experience, all that training, all that hard-won knowledge to make sure we students do not accidentally poison ourselves in chemistry lab or break our bones doing something stupid in the training facilities. That is the most human thing I have ever heard. 6 months later, I graduated, moved on to advanced studies, kept in touch with my friends. Elix finally learned how to use the gravity shower without incident. Zilla joined the combat sports team and became captain, Thoran admitted. His name was actually not ironic. His planet just had one really small desert, and he was from there. But I never forgot Nurse Vance. How could I? She is still there. At Andromeda Apex Academy. Still patching up kids. Still smiling that warm smile. Still calling everyone sweetheart in that way that makes you feel like maybe, just maybe, everything is going to be okay. And if another group of terrorists ever tries to take over the school, well, I almost feel sorry for them. Almost. Because they will have to go through her. And that woman has forgotten more about combat than most people ever learn. She just chooses not to use it, unless she absolutely has to. That is the thing about humans. See? They are weird. They are fragile. They are absolutely ridiculous in so many ways. But they are also the most terrifying and the most compassionate species in the galaxy. Sometimes simultaneously, often in the same person. And I am really, really glad they are on our side.